Our second piece of advice is to be goal setters. Whenever Vince and I know that we're going to be spending quality time with friends or family members who aren't followers of Jesus, we set goals beforehand to have at least one specific conversation with each of them, and then we let each other and certain friends know what those goals are so that they can help hold us accountable to them. It's not necessarily in our control what the results of those conversations will be, and nor should it be. After all, we're not setting out to control anyone, but simply to engage them in a meaningful spiritual conversation that creates space for them to consider in greater depth the hope that Jesus offers. What the outcome of that will be, we cannot say. Only God knows. However, what is largely in our control is whether or not those conversations happen in the first place. Personally, I found that the difference between whether or not those conversations take place typically comes down to the simple act of whether I set goals in advance or not. It's such a small thing, but it makes a huge difference. Perhaps some of you find yourselves flinching at the idea of setting conversational goals. After all, aren't conversations supposed to be spontaneous? Shouldn't we just go with the flow and see what God does in the moment? Yes, that is certainly part of it. However, we also recognize it to be true in most other areas of life that it is a good thing to set concrete goals. How many of you have ever successfully improved your physical fitness without setting goals? I know for a fact that if I don't set multiple alarms to wake up early to exercise, it is never going to happen. Even then, it's 50-50. So why are we willing to be so diligent and forward-thinking when it comes to our physical fitness, but not when it comes to sharing the gospel? That just doesn't make any sense. Shouldn't we be working hardest for and investing the most forethought into the fruit that lasts? Oftentimes, I think that what holds us back from setting concrete goals isn't that we don't think it's a worthwhile idea. It's because setting goals opens us up to the possibility of failing. And nothing scares us more than failing at evangelism in particular, precisely because the stakes are so high and the relationships mean so much to us. But one of the greatest gifts about being a Christian is that Jesus' sacrifice should free us to be willing to fail, to not be afraid of failure, because we know that our identity and our value is by God's grace alone and not by any record of our successes and failures. Part of what helps me overcome the fear of failure, specifically the fear of letting God down by saying the wrong thing, is by reminding myself that God is so much greater than my failures, which means that no matter how badly I'm convinced I've messed up a conversation, I am incapable of undermining God's reputation or thwarting His plans. Yes, I can make myself look stupid, but I can't make Him look stupid. He won't allow me to. I simply don't have that kind of power over Him. God invites us to join Him in His work in the world because He delights to involve His children in His plans. But He doesn't need us, and we can't ruin things for Him. And He is more than capable of working around or even through our mistakes in ways that will astound us. For this reason, let's not be afraid to make the most of every opportunity, as Colossians 4 instructs us, by setting concrete goals to initiate specific conversations, all the while doing so with the freedom and joy that comes from trusting God for what comes out of those conversations, knowing that He can take even our weakest efforts and do exceedingly more than all we could ever have dared ask for or imagined. It has been so encouraging to me to watch how my parents have come alive in their evangelism over the last few years. My dad is a pastor, but after being in ministry for over 30 years, they realized a while ago that they didn't have that many friends who didn't already know Jesus. So they joined a golf club a few years ago with the intent to cultivate good friendships and meaningful conversations. Their goals weren't outrageous, but they were concrete. They played golf once a week with the commitment to one another that they would touch on a spiritual topic of conversation at some point during their game with whoever they'd been paired with that day. And after 2 years of faithfully investing in that community, when Christmas came around, they then invited 22 members, none of whom were Christians, to the church carol service, followed by a Christmas dinner party at their house. But you know what? Because of the way they had been intentional in setting goals for their conversations, every single one of those friends came to the church service, which was such an encouragement to the church to see their pastor show up with 22 unbelieving guests at a Christmas service. And ever since then, they've been astonished by the opportunities for ongoing evangelism that have come out of that one simple, concrete goal that they set, including my dad leading one of those friends into relationship with Jesus and then being invited to preach at his funeral to hundreds more in attendance from that same golf club. For each one of us, the goals that you set will look different depending on your context, the relationships that are already in your life, and whomever else the Lord is calling you to share the gospel with in this season. So I want to encourage you to spend some time praying through the following question, because I think it's vitally important that it's one we all have an answer for. What conversational evangelistic goals are you pursuing at the moment? And how are you sharing them with others and pursuing them in the context of community?